SE Electronics just sent me these two new microphones. We've got the SE4100 and we've got the T1. Now they do resemble each other quite closely in most aspects, but there's at least one major difference, or well, maybe two major differences. But the question is, can you actually hear the difference? And more importantly, are these microphones suitable for content creators? Now, I have been testing these mics for weeks now, and I've used them for voiceovers. I've also been using them to test out this new mixer interface that I'm gonna review in a few weeks. It's from Lauten Audio. It's the 32CI. But that's a different manufacturer, different review, but it's a great way to also get to know these microphones. Now, I've compared them with each other, but I've not had a chance to actually compare them to other microphones, so that's something I'm gonna do too. So while I talk about these microphones, I am going to be switching back and forth between them so that you can hear how each one sounds compared to the other. Also, we gotta talk about the AKG C414 and how that fits in with this, because these microphones look a little bit like, okay, they look a lot like the 414, so there's gotta be something going on there, right? But we also have to talk about the heritage of these two mics themselves, because these are not the first iterations of these microphones from SE Electronics. The SE4400 and the T2 are kind of the matching sort of more capable microphones in the sense that they have multiple polar patterns, whereas these are just cardioid microphones. I assume the idea was, of course, just to have a more budget-friendly version of the 4400 and the T2. So let's talk about what you actually get with these microphones. You get the microphone, obviously. You get a shock mount. It's a spider-style shock mount, but it is very slim. It's which is great, well, because it fits the shape of the microphone, but it's also, it also allows you to get in close. Like if you're gonna mic a guitar cabinet or something like that, where you need access to the front of the mic because you gotta get it really close, or maybe you're going for a proximity effect, speaking into it, and that way there's no shock mount getting in the way. You also get these cute little light cases. They're really sturdy though. They're small, but the microphones are small too, so it kind of makes sense. That's really handy though. And that's it. That's all you get with them. What you don't get with these microphones is a pop filter. And not only is there not a pop filter, but there isn't like a little slot to put one in on the shock mount. If you've ever seen the SE2200, it's got a little slot and it's got a matching pop filter that goes right in. That's really handy. You're gonna need a pop filter if you're using them for any sort of vocal work. I'm not, just so that you can hear how they sound, without any filtering done by the pop filter. Okay, so at this point, you're wondering what the difference is between these two microphones. I mean, why bother having two versions of them? Obviously, one comes in a different color than the other, but that is a superficial difference. The real difference is that the diaphragm in the 4100 and the 4400 is gold sputtered. Now that's pretty standard for microphones of any quality really, because gold is a great conductor and it's easy to apply to the mylar, anyway. So this is gold sputtered. This is titanium sputtered. I don't even know if you can sputter titanium, if there's some mystical unicorn process to get the titanium on the diaphragm. But there's titanium on it instead of gold. And titanium is lighter and it's stiffer. So theoretically, a titanium diaphragm is going to be much more responsive to transient. So if you are recording drums, for example, you're going to get that crack out of the T1 that you might not get out of a gold sputtered diaphragm. So let's talk about the specs of these mics. And they're just basically identical, one microphone to the other. And we'll talk about what the difference could possibly be in a little bit. Now, probably the most important spec for a lot of people is the price, $350. That is way cheaper than an AKG C414. It's also cheaper than a 314 or a 214. I think the idea is to compete with that iconic microphone, but at a lower price, and from SE's standpoint, probably higher quality, at least in their minds. Sensitivity on these microphones is -32 dBV, which and it's identical for both microphones, and that is very similar to the AKG C414, both models, the XLS and the XL2. Now, the maximum SPL or the sound pressure level is 137 or 147 or 157 dB. Yes, you guessed it. There is a pad on these, a -10 and a -20 dB pad. So if you're doing like drum overheads or something like that, kick those pads in and you're still good to go. Now, I am not going to demo the pads because you know what pads sound like. They sound quieter. All right, so the self noise on these microphones is 9 dBA. And self noise is basically how noisy are these mics if you're not feeding anything into them? Just what noise do they generate on their own? And 9 is pretty respectable. It's not the quietest in the world. In fact, the C414s are rated at 6 dBA. The quietest in the world is probably 4 dBA, but really, you know, I've used microphones that were at 15 dBA and stuff like that, and it really didn't interfere for recording voice. Now, if you're recording something really, really quiet, then it might make a difference, but these mics have a respectable noise characteristic, so I wouldn't worry about that. Both of these microphones have a high-pass filter, otherwise known as a low roll-off filter. So I'm going to start with the 4100 here. This is in the nominal position, no roll-off. This is just flat. Now I'm going to roll off at 80 hertz. Okay, so I'm rolling off at 80 hertz now, and you might hear a little difference in headphones. Very unlikely to hear a difference if you're hearing this out of the speakers of your phone. So I would suggest, go get some headphones. Okay, this is rolling off at 160 hertz. It's going to be considerably more dramatic, but again, maybe just in headphones. And now I'm speaking directly into the T1, and I'm going to do the same thing. This is with no roll off. This is flat. And this is rolled off at 80 hertz. So again, you might be hearing a little bit of difference. And this is rolled off at 160 hertz. So probably much more difference. Okay, so that's the filters. And we are back to, we're back at 0 or nominal on both of these. Over the last few weeks, I've had a lot of discussions with my contact over at SE, about these microphones. And I had a lot of pointed questions about, what were they aiming for? Were they aiming for the C414 as competition? And, they were diplomatic, but yes, basically I got the impression they're trying to take out the C414s. Even in their advertising, there's a lot of comments about no plastic switches and, like high quality. Now, the AKG C414 has gone through an evolution, and some people would argue that it's not a great evolution where it's ended up. The old C414s, I know there's always that vintage is better vibe, but the plastic switches reference is to the current incarnation of the C414. The vintage ones are held in high regard. The modern new ones, so I think, and this is not SE Electronics talking, this is me talking, but I think SE saw an opportunity to take on the 414 and take on, the reputation it has and provide something with a higher quality and a lower price point. So that's where the 4400 comes in and the T2, because they, like the C414, are multi-pattern microphones. They can do omni, they can do figure 8 as well as cardioid. SE Electronics told me that the capsules in these, the baby versions of the microphone sets are the exact same capsules. Now, you need a double-sided or like a dual diaphragm capsule in your microphone to be able to do multiple polar patterns, because you kind of like mix the signals and reverse polarities and stuff from the front and the back and all that. You don't strictly need that with a cardioid microphone. There's ways to do the cardioid pattern with just a single diaphragm. But SE Electronics wanted microphones that sounded identical to the more expensive versions they sell so that you could mix and match these in the studio and not have to like worry that the sound was going to change too. So it's a little bit more expensive to have that dual diaphragm set up in a simple cardioid microphone, but they wanted that sound to be identical. Okay, so now I am comparing the 4100 to the SE2200, and this is one of SE Electronics' original microphone designs. It goes way back to the start of the company. It's been used on albums. It's been used by recording artists like Amy Winehouse and others. To be honest, the guy from SE Electronics was telling me about all these artists that have used the 2200, and all I heard was Amy Winehouse. So the 2200 microphone is a single diaphragm condenser microphone. It doesn't have the front and back one. So it's, electronically and mechanically very different from the 4100 or the 4400 for that matter. And I've had this microphone for a while. I didn't realize this microphone actually has a transformer in it, whereas the 4100 is transformerless. In other words, it doesn't have a transformer in it. That can have subtle differences with sounds, especially with percussive sounds and things like that. I don't generally hear the difference between a transformer and without a transformer because, I don't know, I'm just not that cool. From a functionality standpoint, or at least switches standpoint, both of these microphones are very similar. Both have a 3-position high-pass filter where you can have either flat or 80 hertz or 160 hertz roll off. They also have a 3-position pad switch, so you can either have 0 or -10 or -20. I'm not going to go through all of those. I should also mention that the SE2200 is a cheaper mic than the 4100. I think, if I remember correctly, it's about $100 cheaper at $250. Also, it comes with a pop filter. The 4100 does not. It comes with a big old metal circular pop filter that slides right in this slot here, so you don't have to worry about like mounting it to your mic stand or anything like that. I think that's really cool, really helpful. All right, now I'm comparing the 4100 with the Lauten Audio LA-220, and both this and the SE2200 I reviewed, I guess, last year. So if you want to check out those reviews, you can. Now, this microphone is very different from the 4100 in terms of sound and in terms of like functionality when we talk about switches, but it is similarly priced. They're both about, I think this is $360, this is $350, that's the same. Now the Lauten Audio mic, the LA-220, does have, instead of doing a pad switch and a low roll-off, they have a low roll-off, just 2-position, flat, and I don't remember the frequency. I want to say it's 125 hertz, but I'll put that up on the screen. But it also has a high roll-off, and I'm pretty sure that rolls off at 12 kilohertz. So I'm not using any of those switches, though. I just want you to hear the microphones, just directly set to nominal. All right, I have spent several days analyzing what I filmed earlier, and I've given everything a listen, and I've come to some surprising conclusions. Oh, and by the way, in case you noticed the difference in the sound, I've got a pop filter on the mic for this part. First off, I'm not hearing much of a difference between the 4100 and the T1 on my voice. There should be a slight difference in frequency response, especially in the low end. And to explain why I think that, we need to consult our old friends, Audio Test Kitchen. ATK, as I like to call them, has kindly given me permission to use the results of their microphone testing in my videos. And they have tested and recorded something like 300 mics in an anechoic chamber so that you can truly compare different mics under the same conditions. And by the way, you should definitely go check them out. I have a link to their site in the video notes. Now, they don't have the SE4100 and the T1 because these mics are too new. However, they do have the multipolar pattern versions, the 4400 and the T2. So SE designed the new mics to sound identical to these, so we should be able to compare using the other mic specs. When I listen to the recordings on Audio Test Kitchen, I can hear a slight boost in the highs and the lows on the T2 as compared to the 4400. The frequency charts do show the T2 having a very slight boost in the low end as compared to the 4400. Like around 1 dB. And the high end is slightly boosted as well, but we're talking half a dB tops. It's very possible I'm imagining that I hear the difference, quite frankly, so maybe go check it out yourself. The thing is, the Audio Test Kitchen sample recordings contain, full frequency information, bass, hi-hats, not just vocals. So when I just compare the 4100 and the T1 with my voice in my studio, I'm not really hearing much of a difference. I even did some testing with some really percussive, high frequency, fast transient sounds to see if I could hear a difference between the two mics. Because the T1's titanium coated diaphragm is supposed to respond faster, and so the transients should be more accurate. But I don't see anything in the waveforms I recorded that just screams better accuracy, and I don't hear a difference either. Is this a problem? I don't think so. Both of these mics sound very good. They have a very flat, neutral frequency response, which means they can be used to accurately record all types of sound sources, including the human voice. And because they're so neutral, they'll be easy to EQ in whatever way you want, and you won't be fighting the mic or having to compensate for too much, character. The C414 is a bright mic no matter what variant you try, and I don't own one because first off, I'm not made of money, but also they're way too bright for my taste. I have recorded with them a long time ago, but mostly just use them for drum overhead, so I don't have one to compare. But fortunately, we can look at Audio Test Kitchen again and at least get a sense of how these mics are different from the SE mics. All right, so you can see here I have the curves of the C414 XL2 and the XLS, and also the 314 and the 214. Now, the 214 has a boost of about 10 dB at 12 kilohertz, and the 314 and the XL2 are boosted around 3 to 5 dB. Now, the XLS is a little more neutral in the top end, but hardly flat. So, I mean, if you like that crispy high end, then maybe the SE mics aren't for you. But if you want something that's more neutral, more, dare I say, honest, and yes, I realize that's kind of a loaded word, but something that's gonna EQ easily to your personal preferences, and I should also point out is way more affordable, then the 4100 and T1 are a better bet. And this is true for any sort of thing you're recording, not just voice. So as a content creator, and as you know, that is always my focus, should you get the T1 or should you get the 4100? You know what? It is totally okay to decide based on color. If you like the gray of the T1, get the T1 because, on voice, either of these mics is excellent. And to me, there is very little difference in sound between the two. And since they're the same price, why not go with your favorite color?